All right. Welcome to Cryptic Corner. It's time to delve into the unknown. Thank you, everybody, for joining me this evening, and everybody else who's joining me live, because this is recorded live from the Hive on Saturday morning. So you will be enjoying this with me and my live audience. So let's get started here. So there's there's sort of a trend that I do. I'll get like there'll be every few weeks on Cryptic Corner. I'll get a wild hair and want to do a cryptic of just like a known animal that just has cryptic versions of it. Like you all saw a couple of weeks ago, I did the big cats with the South American big cats, where I talked about the jaguar, the legendary jaguars with the stripes and the different species of big cats from South America. We've done the hyenas from North America, just like known animals either out of place or with some bizarre feature, especially giants. And we've done giant spiders a couple of times on this show. Giant snakes was an episode that we did where there's only an episode of Cryptic Corner where I had a guest host, and that was Dragons in Genesis. Popped in and had his snakes, Jason from Dragons in Genesis. If I still have that in the commands or not, I wish I did. If I don't, but it used to be ! Dragons, but I don't think when I updated the system that he made it through the filter. So yeah, we'll have to update that with Jason because he's not up there on BugBots. This is BugBot up here. BugBot's got its own screen now. I brought BugBot its own screen. It's actually my TV that doubles as BugBot's screen. When I feel like it turns into my TV and I turn it around because it's facing my bed. Anyway, so today's no different, right? Today is absolutely no different. We've done our cycle of ghostly stuff and aliens and all that stuff, and we're back to animals, which is a personal passion of mine. But I'm going to make it weird for us. It's going to start out really weird, because I'm going to call this episode The Frog and the Toad, because we're going to look at Cryptic Frog and Cryptic Toad today. So it's a two-parter, but Frog and Toad two-parter, so that's going to be fun. The first part, let's pop this up here, is going to be, it's actually in North America, and it is, it is from the great state of Ohio. This is the Frogman of Loveland, Ohio is the video, but I always grown up calling this creature the Loveland Frog. But this is like a 12-minute video. We're going to drop the lore here, okay? You guys ready? Let me know if you can hear it, because, yeah. Yeah, Society of the Supernatural. And did you see how they just used the scene from, or the opening thing from Supernatural and just slapped Society of and a similar font above it? That is great use of available free resources. I give props to these guys. I bet you all thought I was going to disparage them, but I give props to them for that. One thing I would do is I like to invert and shift colors and stuff like that when I do something like that, just to kind of make it my own, put my own artistic touch on it. At least, right? If you're using parts of other people's art, you need to alter it to a state. You can't just like slap your own text over top of it. But that's just that'd be my only critique. But I appreciate using the amount of resources available. No sound. Okay, thank you for letting me know. It hasn't had any sound yet, but there hasn't been anything said. I haven't even let it play. I'm just yammering. Let's see here. So this is going to have to switch to this. Okay. There we go. That should have sound now.
Well, it's late at night and we're cruising along through Loveland, Ohio.
Yeah, next to the Little Miami River.
That's right.
Well, there was a little bit of motor sound, but no talking or anything.
Right, and it's a sign, welcome to Loveland. This is, man, this place it's such a weird story, in terms of cryptids, because we're not talking about Sasquatch or any of the common ones. We're talking about the frogman tonight.
Yeah, it's a highly unusual tale there.
It's highly unusual, and it's just a really crazy story. Now, the first part of this begins in 1955 when either a traveling businessman or salesman was driving through Loveland and reported seeing several creatures that he described as being between 3 and 4 feet tall, and they were frogs.
Wow.
They were having a conversation.
Bipedal frogs?
Apparently, they were bipedal. They were having a conversation apparently on the side of the road, and he
Giant frogs on the side of the road in Ohio is the story. It gets weirder though. I mean, it's gonna get weirder. Yeah, Japan has some weird cryptids too. When we do the turtle one, it's gonna be this summer. It's actually gonna be funny because I was talking about better earlier. It's gonna be I'm gonna record something live while I'm out there because there's in Indiana there's a lore about a giant snapping turtle called the Beast of Busco that's right there by where I'm gonna be. So I'm gonna swing by there if I can and get some footage and see if I can't get out by the lake and just do some poking around. Should be fun. But yeah, there is a turtle episode. It's going to be like this frog episode, but it's going to be later this summer. Probably be in August.
He was so sort of stupefied by what he was seeing that he stopped and he observed them conversing with each other. And it gets a little wacky because one of them purportedly pulled out a wand, waved it over its head, and a bunch of sparks flew off.
Mark, these comments are getting totally out of hand.
Whoa.
Which frightened this businessman or salesman, whichever he was, and it caused him to take off. And of course, he reported the incident. Became known as the
If you have to newt Mark, go ahead.
Loveland Frogman. Has this whole thing begins to unfold over the years. It gets even wilder by the 1970s because there's a law enforcement officer involved.
That's
now,
compelling.
It is. It's fast.
Yes, a wand. That's what we're talking about. A wand that shoots sparks is what this frog. And this is the old folklore. This is the old folklore, like old timey folklore. It comes into the modern time. We'll get there.
Fascinating. I think we're actually going to check out maybe this area where this police officer had his encounter, and we'd love to look at these local legends. So let's see what we see.
Yeah, we'll pull over and check it out. Right here's the area.
All right, they're going to get out and tell the story now. About the modern story or whatever. Yes. So here we go. There is actually a newer game based on this, like a survival horror game that's based on the Loveland Frog. There's like some kind of cult and stuff about it in the game and universe. So yeah. I haven't looked at too much of the gameplay. I just saw some 15-second clips and stuff of it just to see what it was. I might have to look into it a little bit more.
All right, gentlemen, you all ready?
Yep.
It's pretty eerie out here along the river, Dave. And I was talking earlier about the first sighting of these frog people.
Yep.
That was recorded in 1955, purportedly the first sighting. But there's an even more fascinating one that occurs in the 1970s when we fast forward. So March of 1970.
Now, if you ask me, and we'll look into it in just a second, just kind of look at the lore a little bit deeper, but I kind of feel like the 1950s sighting was tacked on after the 1970s sighting. I question whether or not that was a serious thing that happened before. But you know what? I shouldn't. I should give it the benefit of the doubt. You guys are right. You guys are right. I'm being too harsh on the whole lore. So we'll look. We'll look.
Me too. There's a police officer named Ray Shockey, who's patrolling this area. Icy conditions. He's driving very slow. He's heading into Loveland when he sees in the road a creature that was crouched over like a frog. Now, he said that this creature was between 3 and 4 feet in height, between 50 and 75 pounds. He knows the height because this thing stood up and stared at him on its hind legs.
Wow.
Once it looked at him, it headed this way, climbed over this guardrail down to the river. Now, it gets even crazier because Shockey's fellow officers came out to investigate, and they found scratches and abrasions on the guardrail where Shockey reported that this thing had indeed gone over down into the water. Now, unfortunately, we don't have any.
I don't know how the guardrails look in Ohio, but the rails in most, because I've never been to Ohio, but the guardrails in like every state that I've ever been to are scratched up from end to end within the first few months that they're in place, right? Like you can see a brand new shiny one get put in, and then within a few months they're all scratched up. So I don't know, maybe Ryan.
Photographs.
You're squatting on the side of the road in your frog suit. She was in her frog jammies and had to cop a squat. It happens. And, you're traveling through Ohio at night. You don't want to stop in one of these podunk gas stations. That's terrifying, especially back in the 70s. So you cop a squat on the side of the road.
That have been discovered to support this. I don't even know if they were taken at the time. We're talking about early 1970s, so different matter. But what gets me, Dave, this guy had nothing to lose, nothing to gain. He had everything to lose, actually, because he joined the force in 1971. He ended up serving 40 years, so he's a veteran police officer. But 1972, this guy's a rookie. I mean, what do you think about that, man? This guy's a year on the force, and he's reporting seeing a frog man?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, police officers are held to a higher standard than normal people.
Right.
And their testimony...
Are they, though? It seems like they're believed more than regular people, even though, historically it's shown that they're just as willing to fabricate things as anybody else, that there's no, being on the police force doesn't give you any special observational skills or anything. It doesn't give you any, other than maybe years of experience in dealing with situations. But then you have to take into consideration that they just said this guy was new on the force, so he didn't have that years of experience. So, this is a different one than the ones with the wand, though. This guy doesn't have a wand. This frogman doesn't have a wand.
When in court is counted very highly, and when you're a law officer, your reporting is very important. And this guy being a rookie
In a small community.
That is probably highly religious in those days.
Right, sure.
For him to come out and actually tell his account of what he saw. Number one, he's going to be ridiculed by his fellow officers. Number two, the local community is going to be like, can he be trusted?
Right.
What is this guy doing to be seeing stuff like this? So in doing so, he must have been very conflicted from my point of view, because
Right.
he's like in a conundrum. What do I do? I saw this thing. I know it was real.
Does he know it was real, though? We're going to look, again, there's more to this story than what gets laid out here.
Felt compelled enough to report it, and it's like, as you said, his fellow officers came out, investigated it, and sure enough found some evidence of his story. So to me, that's very
Now, we don't know, obviously, what kind of ridicule he suffered, initially when these reports were made. The whole legend grew from that point even more about the Loveland Frog, or the Loveland Frogman, as it came to be called. And there were some additional reports, and there was a report a little bit later from another police officer who later recanted on his story and said, well, it was in...
Tsunami, I didn't know you were on Discord. Send me a friend request, or join the Hive. Someone dropped the Hive Discord link. So if anybody else is on Discord too, please join the Hive so I can engage with you guys in real time.
An escaped iguana that stood up and ran.
See,
and
to me, that doesn't make sense. Okay,
it doesn't.
I would say he probably faced a lot of ridicule from the community and
Right.
his superiors, and they told him, "No, you didn't see that. You saw an iguana." That's
Right.
the story.
It's amazing that Shockey held fast to that account.
It is.
And it kind of shows that maybe
You'll see the description. He's pretty clear about what he saw. It's just been sensational.
some other people, buckled under that kind of pressure, but
It's a lot
this
of pressure
gentleman
for an officer.
did not. And you got to give him respect for that. At least.
Yeah.
And
It's criterion of embarrassment outside of New Testament apologetics. Isn't that it works on multiple levels? Yeah, so that's the thing, Mark. It's like, which is more credible? A escaped iguana that lost its tail and was trying to run from the officer, or a alien frogman with a space wand?
the bottom line is,
Or alternatively, interdimensional wizard frog race, whatever you want to call it, or Ryan with her butt cheeks wand, whichever one of those.
given us an incredibly wild local legend.
I'll tell you another take on that before you continue. Imagine a community, and they've heard these stories over the years. The superior or the chief of police may have said, you need to quell that, keep a state of panic from happening in the community. That's another scenario that they may have come up with. You didn't see that, you saw an escaped iguana, no big deal. And and you can see that point of view because things like that can cause a really state of panic in an area. That there's stories of frog creatures running around, So there's always cover-ups in some sort when these things occur.
It's an incredible story. It's really wild to a degree. It's amazing because it's given us this incredible.
We need a song about this cryptid. There's songs about cryptids. There's songs about. I know there's a song about the folk monster. There's a song about the Missouri monster. The Jersey Devil has the song. Bigfoot has dozens of songs. We need a Frogman song, okay? We need a Loveland Frogman song. So all my musicians out there, just let's start working on some lyrics as you listen to the lore and kind of mold it into a masterpiece. Maybe we could even do the Frogman the musical. I don't know.
Local legend that has grown over time. A lot of people get into cryptozoology when they go beyond the common, Sasquatch and Mothman. They hear about some of these more unusual cryptids like the Frogman. And on the one hand, it's really kind of out there because it's so unusual and so unique. But hey, it's all part of the mysteries of the world. This is the kind of stuff we explore.
Absolutely.
And we just don't know. I mean, back then, we're talking almost 50 years ago.
Absolutely. Rural area. And stuff like this was not talked about. You would be shunned in certain aspects of society for even mentioning anything of the sort.
Absolutely.
You and I have been doing this a long time, and we can go back to our early days of investigating things. And I know you've experienced the same type of things. You just didn't talk about the unknown, very much. It was taboo, if you will.
So here's some Bumblebee lore. I used to be a late night caretaker at a nursing home, and the cops would come in from two different counties, and the city cops would come in from time to time in the night just to check on things or to follow up on a report because we had so much land, right? And the neighbors were always reporting people up to nonsense, usually kids. But the cops would come in there and they would share their their experiences, and they had ghost stories and monster stories and all that kind of stuff too. They had mostly like normal like crime stories and stuff that they would tell us, but they had some folklore that they shared, not necessarily stuff that they experienced, but stuff that officers before them had claimed to experience in the area and stuff like that. So there is some, this isn't, they're making it out like there's a big, like, oh, you can't talk about this in law enforcement, but freaking they came into the nursing home at night and drank our coffee and told us all kinds of stories all the time. At least we'd have the cops in there hanging out just at least 2 or 3 times a week. I think they had there was a certain amount of ground searches that they had to do and stuff like that. I don't know. They were always in there. So yeah, that happens. Not a big deal, and they like to talk about it. They think it's fun, especially when they're. It wasn't. I mean, they were trying to get those girl nurses all worked up, so they'd get them. Yeah, they'd get them all scared of their ghost stories and stuff. They essentially the cops were. I was just there. They didn't flirt with me, but it's probably because I had a beard at the time. that might have maybe off the menu, or maybe not. I don't know.
And I could see that happening during those times of these reports.
Oh, sure, absolutely. I mean, back when I started digging into this stuff, it actually was the 1970s, and you really had to use old school journalistic approach and find a way into the community, find a way to talk to people, and find a way to get them to open up and share their stories and accounts. And again, I give a great deal of respect to this guy for coming out with this story. I don't think it was hoax, personally. I think he was being honest with what he believes he experienced and what he saw, and it's giving
that's the key word there, what he believes he experienced.
Us an amazing legend. I, for one, kind of want to dig in at some point and see if there's any connections to even older folklore, maybe native tales in this region, because I know the tribes in this area had a lot of strange tales. And, who knows what was manifesting in this strange little area along the Miami River.
Absolutely.
So, Dave, you know what this kind of reminds me of, this area that we're in, actually, is the whole Defiance werewolf, or Defiance Wolfman story that we recounted, because here we are.
There we go, and here's another thing. A lot of these small towns will have, this is why the Loveland Frog stands out. Most towns either have, like, something like that, like a werewolf, a Bigfoot-like creature, a wild man, or a river or lake monster, something like that, or ghosts. Almost every little town has some ghost lore. Some have UFO or alien sightings. The Mothman is they mentioned that earlier is the big one. But there's like the what are they called, the lake or not the Flatwood Monster and stuff. The weird ones, which was an owl. So was Mothman. But I digress.
We're right in a quiet little community, Ohio again, coincidentally, and even though there are houses a little way down there and a little way down there, this spot is kind of quiet. It's a little bit creepy. We've got a tributary from the water running off here, and just like with the Defiance werewolf, people are talking about a creature in the midst of.
They say it's creepy, but it sounds serene to me.
Their community that kind of came through and went, and it really makes you wonder what kind of things still lurk in our midst that people just don't see on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
So
there is a lot of rare fauna in Ohio that you don't get to see too much. Sometimes transient bears move out that far. Sometimes wolves and things like that. I think there's been some mountain lions that have reached Ohio in recent years. So yeah, there are a lot of things like that that are creeping about.
You often hear me talk about this as far as being law enforcement, military. People simply do not pay attention to their surroundings.
Absolutely.
Something could be behind that tree watching us right now. We wouldn't even know it because it's that easy to hide.
Oh my gosh, this guy is law enforcement. So that doesn't surprise me, though, but because, like I said, they'd come in and tell us these stories, too. It does seem like that there's a certain type of mentality like that. Like, you have to, and it was always something sinister, too. There was always a sinister edge that they tried to spin on any of this lore, It was never benign. It was never... Well, I guess that was more the EMTs. We talked to a lot of EMTs, too, obviously, because it's a nursing home. People pass away, especially in the middle of the night.
And any kind of animal is very inept at, hiding and concealing themselves. And if it's any creature of intelligence, There you
They're
go.
very adept at hiding.
This is the same argument that they make about Bigfoot, right? Oh, he's just good at hiding. So we're talking about, they said, I'm not going to classify the Loveland frog as megafauna, but Bigfoot's definitely megafauna. Hiding megafauna in Ohio is going to be problematic, right? So just keeping that in mind, and something is even as big as the Loveland frog, which is, dog sized or whatever, it needing to be able to sustain itself and sustain a population, it's just not feasible. But I don't know if the lore around the Loveland frog has ever indicated that it's supposed to be a physical being, like a real creature, like what they're like a physical creature. It's supposed to be like interdimensional or something like that. Is always what I understood it to be.
They very much are, and
or alien.
Unfortunately, in this day and age, most people walk around like this with their cell phones.
Absolutely,
so,
yeah.
There's so much that gets missed, I believe. And again, hey, this is the kind of stuff we love to explore.
Absolutely.
What an opportunity to check out this, creepy little location connected to the Loveland.
I don't know why you got to be complaining about people looking at their phone, because I think a lot of people are looking at their phones watching your content and mine. Oh, Dr. Tapioca Weasel's being super generous. Grab those subs, guys. Grab those channel subs. There's a whole bunch of them out there. Snag them. Get them, get them, get them. Woo! Sapir got one. Go, Sapir. Anybody else get one yet? Dr. Osiris. Yes. Yes. Good, good, good. See how the rest of the other three turn out.
Frog.
Welcome to the
So
Hive.
thanks for joining us, guys, as we recounted this creepy little tale.
All right, so that's the Loveland Frogman in folklore, and I just want to take a moment just to look at what they actually say. According to various legends, the creature was first sighted by a businessman or traveling salesman driving along an unnamed road late at night in 1955. This is why I think that this is ad hoc. I think that this part of the lore is ad hoc because there doesn't seem to be any depth to it at all, other than it's folklore. The 1955 sighting with the sparkly wand and all that, folklore. Here's the real sighting. This is the one that actually happened, was in the police reports. There's our iguana. I grew up with iguanas. I've mentioned this several times on the channel. I grew up, my dad was fond of letting us have lizards. He didn't like snakes, he loved lizards. So we had iguanas and noles and bearded dragons and water dragons and all sorts of cool creatures. Night, Mark. Thanks for coming. I love that you were here for our frogs. Yeah, we just appreciate. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up, and if you aren't subscribed to Mark Reed, yeah, here you go. Bug Bottle, get on that, plugging it. Go out. Mark has debates and panels that are fun to watch and engage with. I'm on some of them. I haven't been on many lately because I've been dealing with some me stuff, some health stuff. So I've been kind of steering away from it a bit, but I'll get back in there and you'll see more of me on Mark Reed's channel too. So check him out, hit the subscribe button if you want to see me behaving a little bit spicier than what I do over here. All right. But yeah, the Loveland Frog Report, March 3rd, 1972 at 1 a.m. Loveland police officer Ray Shockey was driving on Riverside Drive near Totes Boot Factory in the Little Miami River when an unidentified animal scurried across the road in front of his vehicle. The animal was fully illuminated in his vehicle headlights, and he described it as 3 to 4 foot long, and about 50 to 75 pounds. And yeah, it gives them the metric, the proper measurements there that most of my American audience probably doesn't care about, but 0.9 to 1.2 meters, about a meter long, is probably how it would probably be properly be described, and 25 to 35 kilograms, with leathery skin. He reported spotting the animal crouched like a frog before it momentarily stood erect to climb over the guardrail and back down towards the river. So it wasn't standing up the whole time. It was crouched down like Ryan pooping. It scurried. The word scurried. The 3 to 4 foot is describing length in this police report. The length of the creature, not the height. The only reason it's described with height is because it stood up to crawl over the guardrail, which iguanas do. Iguanas can actually run on their hind legs too. They can stand up and run like a basilisk lizard, especially younger ones, which this 3 to 4. My iguanas, the biggest one we had, Godzilla, she was just under 4 foot long, but she did not weigh anywhere near as much as they're describing this one, because she would have been maybe at that length, maybe 35 pounds. So about half the weight that they're talking about here, 25 to 35 pounds, I would say. A male iguana might be bulkier. A male iguana might have more weight to it. None of our male iguanas ever got bigger than Godzilla, though, and she was female. So, of course, our other male iguanas were different species too. She was a green iguana, and they were what were they, rhinos? I can't remember. I'll have to look back in the pictures and try to ID them. They had pet trade names at the time. We're talking 1980s, though. Anyway, so 2 weeks after the incident, a second Loveland police officer, Mark Matthews, reported seeing an unidentified animal crouched along the road in the same vicinity as Shocky's sighting. Matthews shot the animal, recovered the body, and put it in his trunk to show Officer Shockey. According to Matthews, it was a large iguana, about 3 to 3.5 feet, about a meter long, and he didn't immediately recognize it because it was missing its tail. Matthews speculated that the iguana had been someone's pet that either got loose or was released when it grew too large. According to Matthews, Shockey was shown the dead iguana and confirmed that it was the animal that he had seen 2 weeks previously. Matthews recounted the incident to the author of the book about urban legends, but says the author omitted the part that confirmed the creature was an iguana rather than a frogman. Matthews also recounted the frogman story in 2016, again on WCPO Channel 9. So this is just journalists going out of their way to fabricate mythology around something more benign, right? The Loveland frog was an escaped pet. It was shot and the body recovered. It's not speculated what this organism was. Now there's conspiracies about that. This is not the same animal. The officer who reported it confirmed that the iguana, when pulled in, was the animal that was shot. So it's been confirmed. Loveland frog, not a real frog, but actually an iguana. The next creature on our list, I'm gonna let Fernando tell us about. Now, Fernando has a channel called William DeFalco. It was really small when I started following it, like a few hundred followers. He's a goofy guy. His name's Fernando. But he has like 36,000 subscribers now. It's wild. Go Fernando. But yeah, here's his video on the Wuhan toad, the Wuhan toad. Do you spell that wrong? Is that a typo? Is it supposed to be Wuhan? Let me check that because I think the proper spelling of it. Wuhan. Oh, it's Wuhan, so it's different than Wuhan, different region. So this is not the COVID toad or whatever. All right, here we go.
Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptid and Monsters video. Alright, another entry here based on one of your suggestions, at least in some ways a little bit loosely, because I was looking up information about a suggestion on a toad, and while I didn't quite find that information up front, it did lead me to this other cryptid that involves a very menacing toad, or set of toads, of some sort. So when I was looking at this information, I found it to be so fascinating that I definitely wanted to share with everybody here, and it has to do with this. You're looking at a drawing or a picture of it here, and it's known as the Wunan toads. I hope I'm saying that correctly, but yes, they are a gigantic set of toads that apparently live in a portion somewhere in China. So lots of good information to share, including some actual sightings of these toads, some documented sightings. So here's all the information tied to this. So what are these Wunan toads? Well, they basically are toads that are larger than life, so much so that they practically dwarf even humans themselves. Much like in my last video, when I was talking about the mosquitoes, the giant mosquitoes that are basically just a larger set of mosquitoes than their smaller cousins. Same concept here. As far as how they look like, all they are just toads like you and I would normally see anywhere in this
Well, they're described as albino, though. I don't know if he gets to that part or not, but yeah.
world, but multiplied in size by a much, much larger item. And then also, they seem to have a very hyperactive appetite of some sort, so much so that they are known to actively hunt the areas that are around their lakes or their location, and then even then pursue humans too. So unfortunately, those people.
And you all know, I mean, the Hive knows that I am obsessed with like toads and frogs and stuff. How many videos and things about frogs and toads do I have? I have a whole intermission that's just about Buphos marinias and its bufotoxin. So yeah, I like toads and I know a lot about them. I just like learning about them. Amphibians were almost what I had in my hive instead of insects. I just it was you know, I love tropical frogs and hungry toads and amphibians in general. So it was very close to that being what was behind me while I was doing my shell. I didn't want to have to deal with too much. I wanted it to be light enough to move around because you need a lot of water stuff to do what I had envisioned for my frogs. But I know a bit about them, and the descriptions here about the toad being voracious. Toads are just voracious. There's a channel that I watch that's a feeding channel, and he'll feed different amphibians, and if there's a toad there, none of the frogs or the frogs and the newts and the salamanders and all the other amphibians only get it has to be right in front of them or the toad will steal it because toads are hungry animals. And this creature is no different. Very much described like a toad.
That live near the habitat of these toads, of these Wunan toads, they are absolutely on the menu list when it comes to the toad's favorite set of foods. Where they're located at, it seems to be a place called the Hubei province of China, which is by a place called the Baofeng Lake. So if you happen to be in that area, then you're somewhat in luck, at least on the cryptid side, because then you'll be closer by to their location. And apparently they've been there for quite some time. It seems like they have become a mythological creature of some sort, a local lore that people know about in those locations. And so much so that they have a great fear of them and also a great respect. Like they also make sure that they're not doing anything that would, let's say, intimidate these creatures other than, you know, trying to make sure they can get rid of them in some places. Now, as far as those two sightings, there's two of them, in fact, that have occurred involving multiple people, and both of them with almost disastrous results. The first one happens to be with a set of fishermen. These are the type of people that are there by that lake that run into these toads most common. It makes sense. I mean, when you're dealing with fishermen, their whole lives are essentially out in the sea, capturing those fishes, selling them for their market, or gathering them for their family, who knows. But they seem to have the most common occurrences with these Wunan toads. And then one of them that stands out, you have to go to 1962. Not too far back, but still a couple of decades or so back. And apparently there were so many of these attacks by these Wunan toads because, again, they have...
And I've tried to get into this place on the map, the Baofeng Lake. I have not been able to get anywhere near it. This part of China is very remote. So I've not been able to get but maybe within a mile of this location, and it's in the mountains. So there's no way to get a good look at this body of water. But I got a good idea where the region is, though. So that's a start.
Have a ferocious appetite. You can imagine what that leads to, where these creatures, they're not docile. They're not going to be just sitting on a lake, essentially just sunbathing. No, essentially they're going to protect their territory, and then when it comes time to hunt, they're going to actively hunt too. Frogs and toads, by the way, are carnivorous. I mean, if you ever have a chance, look online. People post
all extant amphibians are carnivorous.
These videos of some sort, these weird ones, where they show these toads essentially eating or being fed
I had an albino toad when I was a kid too. Keep bringing up all my old pets. I actually caught it in the wild too. It was a wild caught albino toad. I don't know if it would have survived in the wild, but I caught it and kept it for a season until it passed away. But it was really cool. Had pink eyes and all that. So they're rare, but they happen. Albinos everywhere.
Live animals, and these toads have no qualms. They have no reservation about eating other animals. I mean, they will eat rats, they will eat grasshoppers, of course, they'll eat practically anything. As long as it can fit in their mouth, they will absolutely eat it. And the way they attack is pretty ferocious, almost like a snapping turtle of some sort. They'll just essentially lunge immediately, very, very quick speed, almost deceptive when it comes to their size and their tiny legs. You would think that something like that wouldn't move so fast, but yes, they do, and then boom.
So with the with toads, there's kind of a deception about how tiny their legs are. Because when they actually make their leaps, you can see how big and long their legs actually are. They just keep them all bunched up because they're spring loaded. Now, toads don't always do their rocket shot jump. Most times those like a little shamble along, right? But when they need to, they can book it. Now, the cane toad, which is spreading across Australia, is getting bigger and longer and stronger legs. And we did a video about that just a couple of days ago.
That animal is gone. So apparently that has been happening there in that location for quite some time.
A couple of weeks ago, I meant to say.
So much so that in 1962, these fishermen decided to do something about it. For the safety of their family and then for also their ability to gather fish, they decided that they were going to go on the attack. And this involved getting a large group of dynamite, those sticks of dynamite, and then chucking them right into the lake of that Battlefield Lake, supposedly where these toads, again, live in that area. So they did this, but much to their chagrin, if you can believe it, it not only did not prevent these toads from attacking, but it seems to have brought out their quote-unquote leader. It seems like there was even larger toad, more terrifying, more evil.
Now these teeth here are obviously not a batrachian feature, right? You don't see toads with maws full of big gold bony teeth. That's just that's not a thing. Amphibians, of course, being famous for their cartilaginous skeletons, would not have big calcified teeth like that. I like the eggs on the back in this art, but yeah, batrachian means toad-like, by the way, in case you didn't know. But they don't have the big teeth. That's very untoad-like.
At least according to their standards, than the other toads that they've run into before. So if they were dealing with, let's say, some of the menacing toads that they thought were pretty bad before, no, in this case here they are dealing with the mother, I guess. And this one, they even have a name. They gave the name of it as Chan. So this new, I guess, mother toad of some sort, it decided it was having enough of these attacks, and it decided to pursue all these fishermen, not just on the lake, not just to the shoreline, but also 90 feet beyond that period. Imagine a sight like that. You have something like this, larger than a car, using its speed, its ferocity, to come straight at you. And then this girth, I mean, you see this toad is gigantic. Imagine something like that chasing you, and you absolutely understand.
I kind of wonder what inspired this art. It's like, hey, what if we were riding motorcycles and just a giant frog crossed the road, guys? What would we do? It's like, oh, I'm going to paint that. And it's well done. This isn't actually a toad, though. This is a frog. You can tell because it lacks... See right here? When you look at a toad, it has this big sacs behind its eyes. Those are poison glands. And there are a lot of things that are called toads that aren't toads, though. A lot of things, like some things that are called toads that aren't even amphibians. Like a horny toad is actually just it's a horned lizard. Things like that. And some things that are called frogs are called toads, and some things that are called toads are called frogs. Toads are just a subgroup of frogs, to be clear. Bufo within Anuria. But it's a specific group of specific features to actually fit and be a true toad. And they have these big glands behind their eyes that secrete poison if you mess with them. Most all of them do, depending on the species, how it's going to affect a human. Some of it does give a peck a trip. So I wonder if we can get one of these Wunan toads and we can all lick it together as a hive bonding experience.
Understand how frightened these fishermen were. No other indication whether they were able to kill any of these toads. Seems like it wasn't, but that was one of the occurrences that stood out. The other one actually happened in 1987, and it was tied to an expedition that a set of students or scientists there at Peking University
on a routine expedition, and then imagine we're about to hit the greatest earthquake ever known.
City decided to do. And there were 9 young scientists that decided they wanted to not necessarily hunt these Wunan toads, but instead try to capture them. Try to capture footage of them, so that way they could show the world exactly the evidence tied to these enormous.
Look at these. Remember when CDs used to look like this, guys, back when they were made out of stone? They didn't have the same sound quality we do today.
Creatures. And so there they were. They set up camp somewhere within that lake. They brought along a lot of video cameras, I guess state-of-the-art stuff back then from the late 1980s. And cut to a little while later,
Let's start a GoFundMe to send me to Wunan Lake to find these toads. Y'all want to do that? Let's start a fundraiser to send Bree to China to search for giant toads by herself. I'll document it for you.
and sure enough, they started to see something near the shoreline. It was described as 3 enormous creatures slowly but surely swimming up to the scientists. And then whenever those things got closer, they were able to discern that yes, these were these toads, and they were able to see that these toads had this weird pale skin of some sort, and its mouth, which is probably its most frightening feature, they were able to estimate that it has about a 6-foot wide maw.
There's another depiction of toads with big old calcified teeth that annoys me. Annoys me. That's alright, though. I think they're supposed to just be maybe representative of mutated, like, palpal bumps or something like that.
So absolutely gigantic. This is the kind of stuff where, again, it could swallow a person whole. And so to ensure that they could not, I guess, do anything dangerous to these toads, they sat in that boat, I guess, absolutely still, making sure that they were not attracting any attention to themselves. It didn't work because these 3 toads still came up to their location. And even then, whenever it seemed like nothing was going to happen, it was a little bit too late, at least for their camera. Because what happened next is one of these toads, not realizing that they were going to, instead of trying to obtain a human, they obtained an inanimate object, it unleashed its tongue. Imagine that, like a snatch of some sort, like an actual whiplash or
See, and that's the thing about toads. See, they do have tongues, but they're, when it comes to toads, the tongue is a badass instrument, but it's less like a frog or even like more like a chameleon, where it's long and narrow and like snacks things, and more like a giant slimy boxing glove that comes out and smacks and sticks to you and pulls you in, and then the toad's grabby little arms will shove it in his mouth. That's what they do. That's how toads do it. The description here is kind of bizarre, so it's more
a snatch, a lasso of some sort. It grabbed the tripod with the camera that one of the students had, and then immediately put it back into its mouth, just quick, as a devil, like it's just maybe a second or so that happened. And when that occurred, everyone, of course, was freaking out with those scientists. They imagine that they just ran away at that point. But what they heard later apparently sent shivers down their spines, because once this Wunan toad realized that what it had in its mouth was not prey of any kind, it was some kind of inanimate object, that's when they heard something involving a horrendous guttural shriek from the throat of that toad. So that was the first instance, I guess, that someone would have heard such a shriek.
So I would get mad if I found out if I thought I was going to get some juicy human to eat, and it turned out to just be a freaking camera. I'd be mad too.
From them. But unfortunately, that camera, once it was lost, it also took away the footage that it was capturing of these toads. So had it survived, it would have been
Well, that's unfortunate. The footage was lost because the giant toad monster ate the camera. I think that's probably the first time that I've ever heard a cryptozoologist say, I had footage of the cryptid, and then it ate my camera. I've actually never heard that before, but I love that being the reason we don't have this footage. I absolutely love that. That is cream of the crop. I think we're done here. We can just, Cryptic Corner is just done. We're no more. It's complete.
great instance, something proof, something actual factual stuff that would showcase these toads in all of their glory. But even ever since then, there hasn't been really other sightings with proof that's needed. I mean, apparently there were other circumstances where people ran into these toads, but again, nothing.
Spooky, can you try it for me though? I want to let me know, or send me the magic ring if you want. Yeah, the old Budweiser ads. I didn't know if you all heard, but the Budweiser has announced that the Budweiser frogs have been in a happy, loving polycule since like 1997. So, kudos to them. I wish them nothing but continued happiness, and I appreciated their ad campaign when I was a child, and yeah, I hope that they've had lots of little tadpoles between the three of them. And yeah, poly solidarity.
In terms of anybody being able to capture anything on camera, anything on video, nothing along those lines. In fact, it's been said that such reports, such sightings have actually dwindled down to the point that even most recently there have been none. But still, the idea is that these toads, these one-on toads, may still be within that Battlefield Lake there in the portion of China. So much so, again, that these creatures are part of the lore, that they're involved in a game called Alice Madness Returns. And here you're looking at a picture of one of the toads within that game. Even the character Alice describes them.
Well, this one's based on a Pac-Man frog, though the model is not really on a toad. They do fill the same ecological niche, though, so they have a lot of convergent characteristics to Bufo. Pac-Man frogs do. They have a lot of common traits because they do the same kind of job.
As being one of the largest frogs that she's ever seen, but it could also be because apparently in that portion of the game, the caterpillar within the story shrinks Alice down, so it makes it seem as if these toads are larger than life. But still, it would be reminiscent of the size ratio compared to the real-life Wunan toads that someone runs into. But that's it. That's all the information truly tied to these bizarre, real-life, gigantic toads of some sort. If anyone has any more information about these menacing creatures, definitely something that if someone comes across them, it's not advised to try to get close, because again, these are carnivorous creatures. They absolutely hunt people, and then they want to...
Dude, I would totally love to be my fate to be eaten by a giant toad. Do not take that away from me. If I see a Wunan toad, I'm freaking jumping on that sucker. I don't care if it eats me. I'm either going to pull it out of the lake or it's going to pull me into the lake. But if I ever see any cryptid, you guys can count on the fact that I will not run from it. I will not. No, there's no cryptid that I will turn tail and run from. I promise you. If I see one in real time, I will not. I will have my camera out and I will not run, because the last thing that I'm afraid of is dying. And if I could die proving that a cryptid existed, same goes with ghosts or aliens or any of that. I run towards that stuff when everybody else is running the other way. That's just my nature. It's always been that way. When someone tells me, "Oh, you should have seen this house that was we drove past. It was so haunted," I hear this story and that story about it. I'm like, we need to go to that house now. That was always my position. So that's just me. But what did you guys think of our giant toad monster and our frogman? Was this a good show? You like this format? Do you like this direction where we take like a couple of different cryptids that may have just one or two sightings, but in the same clade, or would fall under the same group of animals, and just kind of covering little ones together like this? Because I have a whole bunch of these where it's just not enough for a whole episode, but if I combine this sighting from here and that sighting from there of a different but similar creature, then I can make whole shows out of it. So I hope that this is what you were looking for when you come to Cryptic Corner, because this is the kind of content that I like to make. So with that in mind, to all my lovely swarm out there watching this Friday night on Cryptic Corner, thank you so much for joining us. Please remember to be kind and take care, and we will see you next time.
What we're talking about is licking toads to get high. Now, for years, various Indians of Central America have ingested the hallucinogenic secretions of toads, but that practice, according to the Drug Enforcement Administration, is against the law. At first glance, the toad does not look like a criminal.
Lick the toad, lick the toad, lick the toad, lick the toad. They call him Narco Toad. On the street, he's also known by his alias, Bufo Marinus. He and his cousin, Bufo Alvarius, are dangerous dudes. They deal in a mind-scrambling substance that defends against intruders. It all comes from a little gland behind the toad's head.
When bitten, the toad secretes a milky white fluid from its parotid glands that can poison its attacker, making them extremely ill and sometimes causing cardiac arrest.
Watch whatever crap comes on next. Coming up next!
Live from the Hive.
The organization took to their Facebook page last week to caution visitors not to lick the Sonoran desert toad. Don't lick it. If you're wondering why anyone would want to do that, well, let's explain. Apparently, this particular species of toad secretes a psychedelic toxin that leads to hallucinations if ingested, but can also make humans really sick, leaving people incapacitated for up to 30 minutes. Well, the NPS didn't say if a particular incident prompted their public service announcement, but a recent report from the New York Times says there has been an increased demand for the poison recently. Perhaps that's the reason the Park Service felt it necessary to remind visitors not to lick toads.
Ew, gross, man. You okay?
Whoa, everything's so significant. Dude, you gotta try this.
Not even. It's got your germs on it.
Not this end.
Oh, I can see the air. And you know what else?
The hallucinogenic compound of bufotoxins sometimes do create a feeling of airiness or flying and things like that, and we believe that the witches flying around on broomsticks is probably due to the toad component of the witch's brew.
While the psychedelic bufotine has been detected in dozens of toad species, Bufo alvarius is the only amphibian known to biosynthesize its O-methyl homolog, 5-MeO-DMT. The toad's neck and limbs carry numerous protuberant glands marked by pores through which venom is excreted from subcutaneous lobules that contain the enzyme responsible for biosynthetic conversion of bufotine into 5-MeO-DMT, in addition to the production of other tryptamines and cardiotoxic steroids.
Ooh, check it out, man. The licking toad. Yeah, licking toad, man. Lick the toad.
The National Park Service says if you see a toad in the wild, keep your tongue in your mouth.
That substance is bitter and foul tasting. It blocks nerve transmission. It can affect the heart. It also can get you high.
Nothing. Here we go. Yeah.
Homer?
Huh?
These are crystallized secretions from a toad. A substance like this killed 4 people in Australia last year. In fact, possessing the secretion with intent to use it to get high is a federal offense.
In order to do any legal action against a person, we'd have to prove drug intent, that you, like conspiracy to lick a toad or conspiracy to sell a toad to lick or something of that sort.
Anything yet? Are you sure you're licking right?
Yeah.
I don't get it. It's supposed to pack an awesome buzz.
If you want to get one of these toads, forget it. The zoo tells us that Bufo marinus is restricted in California. The toad has been introduced in places like Florida, and it's done a lot of damage there. It's also a potentially dangerous toad, and certainly one you would never want to lick. Sylvia?
Never.
Ever? Ever?
No.
Okay, thanks.